The galaxy was in turmoil, teetering on the edge of war. Across its vast expanse, countless civilizations had risen and fallen, each power vying for control, each one believing it was the ultimate force. But now, something had changed. Something new had emerged, something the Galactic Council had not predicted. There was a species that had been overlooked. A species that was weaker, smaller, and more primitive than any they had ever encountered. A species they thought would be easy to crush. Humans. Inside the towering, high-tech meeting room of the Galactic Council, representatives from every corner of the galaxy gathered. Each alien species was unique, some tall and serpentine, others tiny and insect-like, and some so bizarre they seemed almost beyond comprehension. All of them were gathered here for one purpose, to discuss the growing threat to their control over the galaxy. The room buzzed with tension as holographic displays floated in the air. The faces of the council members were grave. In the center, a holographic map of the galaxy rotated slowly, showing planets and systems under the council's control, and others that were now becoming targets of rising rebellions. The alien leaders murmured in hushed tones, each worried about their own survival. But one planet stood out, its name flashing red on the screen, Earth. Something has changed, spoke the leader of the council, an ancient alien with skin like polished stone, his voice low and commanding. The humans are preparing for something. We've received reports from all corners of the galaxy that they are becoming, more than what they once were. More than what we thought possible. The room fell silent. The mention of humans had always been met with skepticism, if not outright laughter. They were an insignificant species, barely out of their primitive stage, barely scratching the surface of intergalactic travel. How could they pose any real threat? The humans are not as weak as they appear, the leader continued, his eyes narrowing. They have potential. I've seen it. They have a spirit that cannot be easily broken, a resilience unlike anything we've encountered before. They fight like cornered animals, and when that happens, they are capable of extraordinary feats. One of the younger, more brash alien representatives snickered. The humans? What, you mean the hairless apes who can barely operate their technology? The ones who have been barely out of their own atmosphere for less than 100 of our years? The leader's stone-like face remained calm, but his eyes glinted with a sharp edge. Do not underestimate them. They have the ability to adapt and innovate at a rate we cannot ignore. I've seen reports of their tactical genius. If we're not careful, they could turn into something much more dangerous than we've imagined. A low murmur spread throughout the room as the alien representatives exchanged looks. Many shook their heads, dismissing the warning. They are just a primitive species, one said, scoffing. We have fleets that can crush them without breaking a sweat. There's nothing to worry about. Another alien, taller and with skin like liquid metal, added, Earth is just a backwater world. We've had far greater threats to deal with. These humans are nothing more than a minor nuisance. The council leader sighed, his ancient eyes scanning the room, reading each face. He knew that the majority of the members were too blinded by their own arrogance to understand the danger. They had faced countless enemies, but none like humans. Still, there was no stopping the council now. The decision had already been made. Then it is settled, the leader said, his voice firm. We will proceed with the plan to conquer Earth. The human race is no threat. Our fleets will descend on their planet, and they will submit to our rule. Their technological advancements are laughable. We will destroy them, and the galaxy will be ours. As the room erupted into murmurs of approval, the leader glanced at a holographic image of Earth. It was a blue and green marble, beautiful and untouched by the chaos of galactic war. To the council, it was a prize, a mere stepping stone in their quest for domination. But there was something beneath the surface of that peaceful planet. A quiet strength. A force they had yet to comprehend. The council members continued to argue among themselves, their voices growing louder and more chaotic. They were too sure of their victory, too arrogant to recognize the storm that was brewing. In the shadows of the meeting room, far from the council's gaze, an image of Earth flickered on a small screen. It was an image that the council hadn't noticed, a shadowy figure studying it in silence. The figure was human, though cloaked in shadow, watching the council's every move, every word. A plan was unfolding, and the humans were ready. They had been waiting for this moment. The council's laughter echoed in the room as they discussed their inevitable conquest. They laughed at the idea of humans putting up any real resistance. They laughed at the very thought of Earth fighting back. But little did they know, the humans had already begun preparing for war. As the council prepared to finalize their plans, the shadowy figure from Earth turned away from the screen. A quiet smile tugged at the corners of his lips. It was a smile that spoke of resolve, of understanding. He knew something the council didn't, something that would change everything. The Galactic Council was wrong. They had underestimated the humans. And they would soon learn that their greatest mistake was ignoring the very species they thought they could crush. The camera zoomed out from the council meeting, and the scene shifted to the vastness of space. The massive ships of the Galactic Council began to move, their destination clear, Earth. But as they traveled, the ominous shadow of Earth's human defenders loomed, unseen but present, ready to challenge their every move. The first step in humanity's fight for survival had been taken, and the galaxy would soon witness a battle like no other, a battle that would see the underdog species rise, defy all odds, and change the course of history. The Galactic Council had warned the aliens about humans, but they had ignored it. And now, they would pay the price. The Galactic Council's fleets were already on their way. Massive ships filled with alien soldiers, weapons, and technology advanced beyond anything humanity had ever seen. As the first ships began their long journey toward Earth, the Council felt confident, certain that nothing could stand in their way. Their overwhelming firepower and technological superiority would ensure that Earth would fall easily under their control. But on Earth, things were moving very differently. Humans knew exactly what was coming. While the Council's arrogance blinded them to the strength of Earth's people, humanity was already preparing for the war that would determine their fate. The world's governments had united under one cause, survival. They had begun to mobilize, building weapons, training soldiers, and developing technology that could counter the might of the Galactic Council. In a high-security underground facility, Commander Jonathan Blake stood in front of a massive control screen, his face illuminated by the holographic map of Earth and the surrounding galaxies. Blake was no ordinary officer. A brilliant strategist with years of experience in dealing with alien threats, he understood the gravity of the situation better than most. But unlike many others, Blake knew that humanity's survival did not lie in raw firepower alone, it lay in innovation, cunning, and the ability to outthink their enemies. Blake was surrounded by a team of experts, engineers, scientists, and military leaders, all working in the shadows, far away from the eyes of the world. They had been preparing for this day for years, quietly developing technology that would give Earth an edge. The humans had something the Galactic Council didn't anticipate, the ability to innovate at a rapid pace, driven by the very survival instincts that had helped them thrive as a species. As Blake paced across the room, he turned to his chief engineer, Dr. Emily Carter, who was monitoring a series of experiments. "How are we doing with the cloaking devices?" he asked, his voice sharp but calm. "We've made significant progress," Dr. Carter replied, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. "The prototype is working perfectly. We've managed to cloak several of our warships from the detection systems of the Council's ships. They won't see us coming." Blake nodded, satisfied. "Good. We'll need every advantage we can get." The cloaking technology was one of Earth's secret weapons. The Galactic Council had relied on their advanced detection systems to track every movement in the galaxy, confident that their superiority in technology would guarantee them the upper hand. But the humans had developed a way to hide their presence, an invisibility shield that made their ships undetectable by the alien sensors. It was a small advantage, but in the vastness of space, it could make all the difference. Blake turned to the next station, where his lead robotic engineer was working on AI-controlled drones. These drones were designed to be the perfect counter to the advanced alien soldiers. The Council's forces were powerful, no doubt, but they were still bound by their limitations that the humans could exploit. Earth's drones, powered by highly advanced artificial intelligence, could outthink and outmaneuver anything the Council sent their way. They were capable of independent thought, learning from every battle, and adapting in real time to any enemy tactics. "We've got our first batch ready for testing," said the robotic engineer, a woman named Natalie, as she activated the first drone on the screen. The machine sprang to life, its movements fluid and precise, its sensors scanning the environment for potential threats. Blake watched closely, noting the drone's ability to react instantly to changing conditions. It was faster, smarter, and more lethal than anything the Council's forces could deploy. If Earth could mass-produce these drones, they would have a fighting chance. The drones were more than just weapons, they were the key to overcoming the Council's technological edge. With these advancements in place, Blake and his team moved to the next phase, preparing Earth's soldiers for the coming conflict. The fate of the entire planet rested on their shoulders, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. Every soldier needed to be ready, both physically and mentally, for what was to come. The military's training facilities were a whirlwind of activity. Recruits were put through grueling combat drills, testing their strength, endurance, and ability to think on their feet. The soldiers ran through obstacle courses, practiced hand-to-hand combat, and learned to use the advanced weapons that were being mass-produced. Every day, they grew stronger, more focused, and more prepared for the battle ahead. In the midst of the intense training, Blake found himself observing a group of soldiers, their faces grim as they ran through simulated combat scenarios. They were using new weapons designed specifically to counter the Council's forces, energy shields that could deflect laser blasts, high-powered plasma rifles capable of piercing alien armor, and grenades that could disable the cloaking technology used by the enemy. Blake's mind raced as he watched them. Earth's military might have been behind the Council's in terms of technology, but they had something else, something that no alien fleet could ever understand. They had heart. They had the unbreakable will to fight for their home. And they had the power of teamwork, of a unified planet coming together to face an existential threat. As the soldiers practiced, Blake's thoughts turned to the psychological aspects of the battle. The humans were underdogs, facing an enemy with superior technology, but that did not mean they were doomed. No, humans had always thrived in the face of overwhelming odds. It was in their nature to fight, to resist, to never give up. Blake knew that if they could inspire that same resolve in their soldiers, Earth would stand a chance. The key was not just the weapons or the technology, it was the human spirit. Meanwhile, far away in another corner of Earth, a group of scientists was working on an entirely different project, one that could change the course of the war. They were working on a new type of energy weapon, one that could drain the power of the Council's warships. The Galactic Council's ships relied on massive energy sources to power their shields and weapons, and if Earth could find a way to disrupt that energy, the Council would be vulnerable. The scientists worked tirelessly, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Each day, they made small breakthroughs, getting closer to their goal. The weapon they were developing would be humanity's answer to the Council's superiority. If it worked, it would level the playing field and give Earth a fighting chance. Back at Blake's command center, the pieces were falling into place. The cloaking devices were ready, the drones were being mass-produced, and the soldiers were being trained for battle. Blake knew that time was running out. The Galactic Council's fleet would arrive soon, and Earth had to be prepared to fight back. The next phase of the war was about to begin. Humanity was ready. But as the final preparations were made, there was still one question hanging in the air: would Earth's strength, innovation, and spirit be enough to defeat the Council's vast technological superiority? Only time would tell. The stakes were higher than ever, and Earth's survival hung in the balance. But one thing was certain, humanity would not go down without a fight. The vastness of space stretched before them as the alien fleet entered Earth's orbit. It was an imposing sight, an armada of advanced ships, each one more powerful than anything humanity had ever seen. They were confident in their victory. They had calculated every move, analyzed every possible defense Earth could put up, and concluded that their superior technology would crush the human race without effort. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth, but the aliens had no idea just how dangerous humanity could be when cornered. As the first alien ships descended into the solar system, they fired up their weapons, aiming them at Earth's atmosphere. The invaders were quick to act, sending waves of soldiers to the surface, ready to begin their conquest. They thought they had all the time in the world, believing that no one could stand against their might. Earth had no defense, they thought. Earth was weak. What the aliens didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this moment. And they had been preparing in ways that the Council could never have imagined. The human fleet, hidden from view by their advanced cloaking technology, suddenly emerged from the shadows. Silent and deadly, the human warships launched a surprise counterattack. The Council's ships had no idea what was happening until it was too late. Earth's fleet, cloaked and invisible to the alien detection systems, struck with deadly precision. The first salvo of missiles from the human ships ripped through the darkness of space, hitting the alien vessels with devastating force. Explosions rang out in the vacuum, sending debris scattering across the void. The aliens had not expected this. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. The surprise attack sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. They scrambled to activate their shields, but Earth's weapons had already breached their defenses. The human ships, using the cloaking technology to stay hidden, continued to strike from unexpected angles, hitting the aliens where they least expected it. The invaders tried to retaliate, but the humans were already on the move again, slipping back into the shadows, ready to strike again. On the ground, Earth's soldiers were ready for the battle to come. Led by Commander Jonathan Blake, the human forces had been training for this moment for years. As the first wave of alien invaders landed on Earth's surface, Blake's forces moved into position. The streets of major cities had become battlegrounds, and humanity's military was determined to defend every inch of their home. Blake and his soldiers knew that they would face overwhelming odds, but they also knew that this was the moment they had been preparing for. There was no turning back now. Blake and his team were among the first to engage the alien invaders. With their weapons and armor, they moved through the streets, pushing back the alien forces. The humans were vastly outnumbered, but they had one advantage: they knew their terrain. Earth was their home, and they used it to their advantage, setting traps and ambushes that the alien invaders were not prepared for. They fought with a ferocity born of desperation, determined to protect their families, their cities, and their world. The battle raged on, with explosions rocking the cityscape and gunfire lighting up the night sky. Blake's team was engaged in close-quarters combat, facing off against alien soldiers in the heart of the city. The humans used their superior tactics and knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver their technologically superior enemies. They set up barricades, used the buildings for cover, and struck when the aliens least expected it. The aliens, with their advanced weaponry and armor, were powerful, but they were not invincible. The human soldiers were relentless. They didn't have the same advanced technology, but they had something that the aliens didn't: determination. Every time an alien soldier fell, another human soldier took their place. There was no hesitation, no fear. The humans knew what was at stake, and they fought with everything they had. Amid the chaos of battle, Blake's thoughts kept returning to his team. His soldiers were the heart of humanity's resistance, and he was determined to lead them to victory. But in the midst of the violence, a familiar face caught his eye: Bonner, his close friend and fellow soldier. Bonner had always been by his side, through the hardest training sessions and the fiercest battles. Blake couldn't help but feel a sense of relief knowing that Bonner was still by his side as they fought to defend Earth. But the war was taking its toll. As Blake moved forward, he heard the sounds of an explosion behind him. He turned around just in time to see Bonner being thrown backward by the blast, his body crumpling to the ground. Blake rushed to his side, but it was too late. Bonner had taken a direct hit while charging toward an alien commander. The blast had been fatal, but in his final moments, Bonner had taken down the alien leader, cutting down one of the most dangerous enemies the humans had faced. Blake's heart broke as he knelt beside his fallen friend. Bonner had given his life for the cause, and in doing so, he had made a difference. He had taken down a key figure in the alien invasion, and that small victory would be remembered. But for Blake, the pain of losing his friend was almost unbearable. He stood up, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. This was not over. The aliens had taken one of their own, but they would not take any more. The loss of Bonner fueled Blake's determination. He stood tall, rallying his soldiers as the battle raged around him. For Bonner, he shouted, his voice cutting through the noise of the fight. For Earth. We will not let them take our world. The soldiers, already fighting with everything they had, now fought with a renewed sense of purpose. They had lost one of their own, but they were not about to lose this war. With Blake leading them, they pressed on, pushing the alien invaders back inch by inch. Every step forward was hard-earned, but every alien soldier that fell was a step closer to victory. As the battle continued, the alien fleet began to realize something that they had never expected. The humans were not the weak, primitive species they had thought them to be. They were resilient, cunning, and willing to fight with everything they had. The human spirit was not something that could be easily crushed, and the aliens were beginning to understand that the war was not going to be as easy as they had imagined. Blake and his soldiers had made their first stand, and it was a victory. The aliens had been pushed back, but the war was far from over. There would be more battles, more challenges, but humanity had proven that they could fight, that they could stand up to the overwhelming might of the Galactic Council. And with Bonner's sacrifice fueling their determination, Earth's soldiers were more determined than ever to defend their home. They had made it clear, they would not go down without a fight. The once imposing power of the Galactic Council was in shambles. The invincible alien leaders who had confidently predicted humanity's downfall were now scrambling to reassess their strategy. Their arrogance had blinded them to the true nature of the human race, and now, they were facing the consequences. The humans, who they had dismissed as a primitive species, had proven themselves to be far more dangerous than the Council could have ever imagined. Now, the Council found itself cornered, struggling to hold on to control, while the humans fought back with an intensity that shook the very foundations of their empire. The Council convened in a high-tech, darkened war room, the tension palpable. Alien representatives from across the galaxy sat in silence, each one contemplating the gravity of the situation. The leader of the Council, an ancient and wise figure, addressed the others, his voice filled with both frustration and disbelief. "We underestimated them," he said, his tone grave. "Humans. They are not like any species we have ever encountered. They fight with a ferocity and unpredictability that no one could have foreseen. Our plans have failed, and we are losing." The room was filled with murmurs of dissent and unease. The arrogance that had once defined the Galactic Council had been shattered, replaced by an urgent need for a solution. The alien leaders had thought they could easily crush Earth with their superior technology, but they hadn't accounted for the human spirit, the resilience, ingenuity, and relentless determination that drove every man and woman on Earth. The humans were not only surviving, they were thriving in the face of overwhelming odds. The Council now realized that their advanced weapons and tactics were no match for the chaos that humanity could unleash. "We must rethink our strategy," the Council's leader continued, his voice rising. "We cannot afford to underestimate them any longer. Their tactics are unlike anything we've faced before. We must strike back, and we must do so decisively." But it was already too late. The humans had already gained the upper hand. Commander Jonathan Blake and his team had pulled off a daring and unexpected victory. They had infiltrated the heart of the alien fleet, bypassing countless layers of defense, and had successfully destroyed a key alien flagship. The battle had been fierce, with Blake leading his team through a series of close-quarters skirmishes, using the human superior tactics to outwit and outmaneuver the alien forces. The flagship, once thought to be invulnerable, was reduced to rubble, a testament to humanity's resolve. But the real prize had been the AI core of the flagship. The core contained valuable intelligence about the aliens' invasion tactics, their weaknesses, and the strategic plans they had for Earth. With the core in their hands, Blake and his team now had the information they needed to turn the tide of the war. The humans were no longer the underdogs, they had become the hunters, and the Galactic Council was now the prey. The intelligence Blake had gathered from the AI core revealed a wealth of information about the Council's next moves. The invasion was far from over, and the Council was preparing for a counterattack. But with this new knowledge, the humans could anticipate the Council's moves and set traps to thwart them. For the first time since the war began, Earth had the advantage. It was a turning point, and the Council knew it. As the war raged on, tensions continued to rise. The Galactic Council, once unshakable in its confidence, was now desperate. The Council's homeworld, a vast and heavily fortified planet, became the focal point of their plans. If the Council could hold on to their homeworld, they might still be able to regroup and recover their strength. But Earth's forces were determined to strike at the heart of the enemy's power. Blake, now fully aware of the potential impact of their next move, began to make plans for a bold and risky assault. With the intelligence they had gained, Earth's military began preparing for the unthinkable, a direct orbital strike on the Council's homeworld. The goal was clear: cripple the Council's ability to continue the war and send a message that humanity would not be defeated. It would be a devastating blow, one that the Council would never recover from. As Blake and his team coordinated the operation, the stakes could not have been higher. The mission was fraught with danger, and the risks were immense. If the humans failed, the Council would retaliate with even more devastating force. But if they succeeded, they could cripple the heart of the enemy's power and end the war once and for all. The humans, having already fought and lost so much, were willing to take that risk. They had already shown they could win against the odds, and now, with the Council reeling from their previous defeats, it was time to deliver the final blow. The plan was simple in concept but extremely difficult in execution. Earth's fleet would launch a coordinated orbital strike, utilizing cloaked warships to avoid detection and missile barrages to weaken the Council's planetary defenses. At the same time, human ground forces would deploy on the Council's homeworld to launch a surprise assault, crippling the leadership and infrastructure from within. If the strike was successful, the Galactic Council would be unable to continue the war, and their hold on the galaxy would collapse. The Council's vaunted empire would come crashing down, defeated by a species they had once thought of as weak. The preparation for the mission was intense. Blake and his team, along with Earth's best soldiers and engineers, worked tirelessly to ensure that every detail was accounted for. The human fleet was ready, but there was no room for error. The success of the mission depended on their ability to strike at precisely the right moment, when the Council's defenses were weakest. They knew that the enemy would expect a counterattack, and so the humans would need to outwit them once again. The suspense built as the countdown to the attack began. The Galactic Council, completely unaware of the coming assault, continued to reassess their options. They were blind to the threat that was rapidly approaching, and as Blake's fleet prepared to launch, the tension among the humans reached a fever pitch. Every soldier knew that this would be their final push. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. Blake, standing at the helm of his flagship, looked out at the vastness of space. He could see the alien homeworld in the distance, a planet bathed in the cold light of distant stars. The target was clear, and the stakes had never been higher. "This is it," Blake said quietly, to no one in particular. "We fight for our world. We fight for our future." The time for hesitation had passed. As Blake gave the order to launch, Earth's fleet moved into position, and the final battle began. The Galactic Council's once unshakable grip on the galaxy was about to crumble, and it was humanity that would bring them to their knees. The war had been long and brutal, but the humans had proven that they were not to be underestimated. They had become the true force of the galaxy, and now, they were about to deliver the final blow to the heart of evil. The ultimate battle for Earth had begun, the final battle had arrived. Humanity's fate, and the fate of the galaxy itself, was hanging in the balance. The battle that would decide everything was about to unfold, and no one could afford to hold back. Earth's warriors, having endured and sacrificed so much, now stood ready for their greatest challenge yet. The Galactic Council, once so sure of its invincibility, now faced the consequences of underestimating the human race. This was their last stand. As the human fleet moved into position, the tension in the air was almost unbearable. The massive, intimidating fleet of the Galactic Council hung in the distance, a formidable force that seemed like an impossible mountain to climb. But the humans, led by Commander Jonathan Blake, were ready. Their strength, resourcefulness, and unity had brought them this far. They had taken on the full might of an alien empire, and now, in the final showdown, they would fight with everything they had to win. The battle began with a thunderous roar. The human fleet, cloaked in invisibility, emerged from the darkness of space, launching a surprise attack on the enemy forces. A volley of missile strikes erupted, smashing into the Council's warships, sending massive shockwaves rippling through the vacuum of space. The human fighters, agile and fast, darted through the chaos, outmaneuvering the enemy ships with precision and skill. The orbital bombardments rained down from above, striking with devastating force, turning the sky above the battlefield into a hellscape of fire and explosions. The humans fought with everything they had, knowing that their survival depended on their ability to overwhelm the enemy's defenses. Blake, standing on the bridge of his flagship, watched the battle unfold with a steady gaze. His mind was calculating every move, every shot, as his fleet took on the full might of the Council. He knew that the key to victory lay in outsmarting the enemy, using their overconfidence against them. The human ships, though technologically inferior in some respects, were far more adaptable and resourceful than anything the Council had ever encountered. The humans had mastered the art of guerrilla warfare in space, and they used their superior tactics to make the Council's advanced technology seem almost useless. Every strike was precise, every move strategic. The human fleet was like a swarm of bees, small but relentless, attacking with force and speed. The action was intense and relentless. Blasts of laser fire shot across the blackness of space, striking enemy ships and sending them into a fiery death spiral. The human ships dodged incoming fire, weaving between massive alien warships with expert precision. On the ground, the fight was just as brutal. Commander Blake and his elite team of soldiers had landed on the alien homeworld, ready to engage in the final assault that would bring the Council to its knees. The alien homeworld, once a shining example of the Council's power, was now a battlefield. The skies were thick with smoke and the ruins of alien cities. The once pristine landscape was now torn apart by the chaos of war. Blake and his team advanced through the desolate streets, weapons raised, eyes scanning for any sign of movement. They knew that this was the last push. Their mission was clear: infiltrate the heart of the alien stronghold, destroy the remaining leadership, and end the war once and for all. As Blake and his team advanced, they were met by waves of elite alien soldiers. These warriors were the best the Council had to offer, armed with advanced weapons and trained for combat beyond anything humanity had ever faced. But Blake and his team were ready. The human soldiers, hardened by the horrors of war, fought with a ferocity and determination that shocked their alien adversaries. Hand-to-hand combat erupted in the streets, as humans clashed with the alien soldiers in brutal, close-quarters battles. Explosions shook the ground beneath their feet, sending dust and debris into the air. The sound of laser fire and the clang of weapons echoed through the ruins. Blake led his team with precision, coordinating every move with military efficiency. His heart raced, but his mind remained calm and focused. He knew that every second counted. The humans pushed forward relentlessly, taking down the alien soldiers with ruthless efficiency. Each victory spurred them on, each fallen enemy a step closer to ending the war. But the final test was yet to come. As Blake and his team neared the heart of the alien stronghold, they were met by the Council's most dangerous weapon, a massive AI-controlled warship, capable of making decisions faster and more efficiently than any living being. This was the last line of defense, the ultimate weapon in the Council's arsenal. Blake had fought countless battles, but this would be his greatest challenge yet. The AI-controlled warship was a force of nature, its weapons nearly unstoppable. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The AI warship hovered over the battlefield, its sleek metallic form glinting in the light of distant stars. Its weapons fired without hesitation, each shot a precision strike aimed at destroying Blake and his team. Blake, undeterred, focused his mind. He knew that defeating this warship would require more than just brute force, it would take cunning, strategy, and every ounce of his leadership skills. Blake's team provided cover fire as he moved toward the warship, his eyes fixed on its exposed core. He knew that if he could disable the core, the ship's AI would lose its control, and the warship would become just another piece of wreckage in the battle. It was a risky move, but it was the only chance they had. The AI was quick to adapt, countering every move Blake made with surgical precision. But Blake was faster. He had seen the flaws in the AI's calculations, the slight delays in its reactions. With every move, he pushed the warship into a corner, forcing it to make mistakes. It was a battle of intellect, and Blake was determined to win. The tension in the air was palpable as Blake closed the distance between himself and the warship's core. He could hear the hum of its weapons charging, the countdown to destruction. He had only seconds to act. With a final, decisive move, Blake planted a device into the warship's core, triggering an explosive chain reaction. The warship's massive form shook violently as its systems overloaded. Sparks flew, and the AI's control was shattered. The warship's weapons fell silent, and it tumbled into the abyss of space, defeated. With the warship disabled, Blake and his team pressed forward, pushing into the heart of the alien stronghold. The remaining council leaders were cornered, their arrogance crumbling in the face of humanity's relentless assault. The final moments of the battle were a blur of explosions, gunfire, and laser blasts. But as the smoke cleared, it was clear, humanity had won. The Galactic Council, once the dominant force in the galaxy, had been defeated by the very species they had once deemed insignificant. Blake and his team had led the charge, using their intellect, their bravery, and their unwavering determination to turn the tide of the war. The Council had underestimated humanity, and in the end, that had been their downfall. The final showdown had been fought with everything humanity had, and the victory was theirs. The galaxy, once ruled by the Council, was now free. Earth had proven that even the most powerful empires could fall in the face of human ingenuity and strength. As Blake stood amidst the wreckage of the battlefield, he looked up at the stars, knowing that humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not as an underdog, but as a force to be reckoned with. The war was over, but the legacy of this battle would echo throughout the cosmos for generations to come. The war was over. The final battle had been fought, and the victory was humanity's. The Galactic Council, once an unstoppable force that spanned the stars, had been defeated. Earth, once dismissed and underestimated, had proven its strength beyond measure. The human spirit had triumphed over overwhelming odds, and as Blake stood among the wreckage of the alien empire, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. Humanity had done what no one thought possible. They had stood firm in the face of certain defeat, fought with everything they had, and emerged victorious. As the dust settled and the last remnants of the Council's forces were eliminated, Blake gathered his team for one final moment. The humans had won, but the cost had been great. Many soldiers had fallen in the line of duty, their names now etched in the history of the galaxy. Among the lost was Blake's closest friend, Bonner. The battle for Earth had claimed many lives, but it had also proven the strength of humanity. This victory wasn't just about defeating a powerful alien empire. It was about showing the galaxy that Earth was no longer a backwater planet, no longer a place to be dismissed. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Blake addressed the galaxy, his voice carrying over the comms as he stood before the gathered leaders of the alien races that had once thought of humanity as nothing more than a nuisance. His words were powerful and unwavering. "The Galactic Council underestimated us," he said, his voice echoing through space. "They thought they could crush us, erase us from the galaxy, but they were wrong. We are not just survivors. We are the inheritors of this world, and we will never be ignored again." His words resonated across the cosmos. The alien races, once dismissive and hostile towards Earth, now had no choice but to recognize the strength of humanity. The very species they had once mocked had shattered the Council's reign, proving that Earth was not to be trifled with. It was a moment of immense pride, not just for Blake and his soldiers, but for every person back on Earth. Humanity had faced impossible odds, and now, standing tall, they had shown that their spirit could not be crushed. As the alien leaders came to terms with their loss, the surrender of the Galactic Council became official. No longer would humanity be the underdog. The Council's vast empire crumbled, and with it, the threat of AI-controlled supremacy. The galaxy was left in ruins, but humanity stood resolute, ready to rebuild. Peace was established, but it was on humanity's terms. The AI threat was neutralized, the once powerful warships now nothing more than scrap, and the remaining alien empires were forced to acknowledge Earth as a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy was changing. Where once there had been fear and skepticism of Earth, now there was respect. Blake knew the journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, new threats to face, but humanity was no longer a species on the brink of extinction. They had proven their worth, and now, they would defend their home and their place in the stars. As the celebrations began and Earth's victory was heralded across the galaxy, Blake took a moment for himself. He stood alone, looking out over the battlefield that had cost so many lives. The ghosts of his fallen comrades haunted him, especially Bonner. His best friend had sacrificed everything to ensure their success, and though Blake had seen many lives lost in the war, Bonner's death weighed heavily on his heart. Blake stood silently for a long while, remembering his fallen friend. Bonner had been more than just a soldier. He had been a brother in arms, someone who had stood by Blake through the darkest times. His sacrifice was the catalyst for humanity's final push to victory. The memory of Bonner, and all the others who had given their lives, fueled Blake's resolve. With a heavy heart, Blake took a deep breath and spoke softly to himself, though his words carried the weight of the entire human race. "We fought for what we believe in. And we will always fight for what is ours." It was a sentiment that would echo through history. The war had been won, but the battle for Earth's future was just beginning. Blake knew that humanity's journey was far from over. But now, Earth stood not as an insignificant, fragile planet, but as a beacon of hope in the galaxy. A new era had begun, and humanity would not cower in the shadows any longer. In the distance, the once darkened Earth now gleamed brighter than ever. The stars above, once so cold and distant, seemed closer. Earth was no longer just a speck of dust in the vastness of the universe. It was a shining symbol of resilience, a testament to the strength of humanity. As Blake looked up at the planet, he could see it for what it truly was, beautiful, strong, and ready for whatever the future held. The final scene was peaceful yet powerful. The camera zoomed out, showing Earth as a beacon of light against the endless void of space. In the distance, humanity's ships stood tall, their weapons silent, but ready for anything that might come next. The galaxy had been changed forever, and humanity had earned its place among the stars. They had proved that no matter how small or fragile they seemed, humans were capable of standing against the greatest threats the universe could throw at them. As Blake turned and walked away from the battlefield, his team gathered around him. There was still work to be done, and the future of humanity was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope. The war had been won, and Earth's place in the galaxy had been secured. They had fought for their survival, for their right to exist, and now they stood victorious. Humanity had triumphed over the impossible, and in doing so, had forged a legacy that would echo through the stars for centuries to come. The fight was over, but the journey was just beginning. Humanity had proven that no force, no empire, and no challenge could ever extinguish their spirit. They would always rise, no matter how great the threat. Earth would defend itself, stand tall, and continue to grow stronger, ready for whatever the future had in store. And as Blake looked up at the stars, he knew one thing for certain: humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, and it would never be pushed aside again.